Chapter 6. Gilderoy Lockhart. The next day, however, Harry barely grinned once. Things started to downhill from breakfast in the Great Hall. The 4 long hours table was laden with turns of porridge, plates of capers, mountain of toast, and dishes of eggs and bacon. Beneath the enchanted ceiling, today, a dull, cloudy gray, Harry and Ron sat down by the Gryffindor table next to Hermione, who had her copy of Forgettys with Vampires propped open against the milk jug. There was a slight stiffness in the stable said morning, which told Harry that she was still disapproving of the way had arrived. Neville at the bottom, on the other hand, greeted them cheerfully. Neville has a round face and a seasoned brown boy with the worst memory of anyone Harry had ever met. Pot due any minute. I think Grand Scenic on a few things they got. Harry had only just started this porridge when, sure enough, there was a rushing sound overhead. 100 of the owls streamed in, circling the hall and dropping letters and packets into the crowding crowd. A big lumpy parcel bounced off Neville's hat, and a second later, something large and grey fell into Hermione's jugs, spreading them all with milk and feathers. "Arrow," said Ron, pulling the branches out by the feet. Arrow slouched, unconscious, onto the table, his legs in the air and the damp red envelope in his beak. "Oh no," Ron gasped. "It's all right. He is still alive," and said Hermione, prodding Arrow gently with the tip of his finger. "It's not that. It is that." Ron was pointing at the red envelope. It looked quite ungingerly to Harry, but Ron and Neville were both looking out. It was such they expected to explode. "What is the matter?" said Harry. She sent me a howler," said Ron faintly. "You'd better open it, Ron," said Neville in a timed whisper. "It will be roast if you don't. My grand sent me once, and he knotted it and he gulped. It was horrible." Harry looked from this petrol face to the red envelope. "What is a howler?" he said, but Ron's whole attention was fixed on the letter, which had begun to smoke at the corners. "Open it," Neville angered. "It will be over in the few minutes." Ron stretched out a shaking hand, eased on the envelope from Arrow's beak, and slid it open. Neville stuffed his finger in his ears. A split second later, Harry knew why. They touched for a moment it bad explode. A roll of sound filled in the household, staking just from the ceiling. "Stealing the car! I wouldn't have been surprised if they did explode you. You were till I get hold of you. I don't suppose you stopped something what your father and I went thought when we saw it had gone." Mr. Weasley yelled, 100 times louder than usual, made the plates and spoons rattle on the table, and he charged differentially off the stone walls. People thought the whole was swiveling around to see who had received the howler, and Ron sank so low in his chair that only his crimson forehead could be seen. "Letter from Dumbledore last night. I thought your father would have died of shame. We didn't bring you up to behave like this. You and Harry could both have died." Harry had been wondering when his name was going to crop up. He tried, and Harry looked at his touch. He couldn't hear the voice that was making his eardrums touch. "Absolutely disgusted. Your father's facing an inquiry at work. It is entirely your fault, and if you put another toe out of line, we will bring you straight back home." A ripping silence fell. The red envelope, which had dropped from Ron's hand, burst into the lamp flames and crashed into ash. Harry and Ron sat stunned. As such a tidal wave had just passed over them. A few pupils laughed, and gradually a babel of talk broke out again. Hermione closed boxes with vampires and looked down at the top of Ron's set. "Well, I don't know what you expect, Ron, but you don't tell me I deserve it," snapped Ron. Harry pushed his porridge away. His insides were burning with gout. Mr. Weasley was facing an inquiry at work, after all Mr. and Mrs. Weasley had done for him over the summer. But he had no time to dwell on it. Professor Mr. McGonagall was moving along the Gryffindor table, handing out timetables. Harry took hits and thought that they had doubled her boogie with the Hufflepuffs first. Harry, Ron, and Hermione left the castle together, crossed the vegetables patch and made of the greenhouse, where the magical plants were kept. At last, the Howler had done one good thing. Hermione seemed to think they had now been punished enough to and was being perfectly friendly again. As they neared the greenhouse, they saw the rest of the class standing outside, waiting for Professor Stopch. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had only just entered the room when she came striding into the view across the lawn, approaching by glittery Lockhart. Professor Sponge's arms were full of bandage, and with another twink of guilt, Harry spotted the whomping willow in the distance, several of its branches now in slings. Professor Sponge was a squashed little wit who wore a patched hat over her flyaway hair. There was usually a large amount of earth on her clothes, and her fingernails would have made Aunt Petunia's foot. Glittery Lockhart, however, was immeasurable in the sweeping robes of turquoise, his golden hair shining under a perfectly polished turquoise hat with gold streaming. "Oh, hello there," Lockhart called, beaming around at the assembled students. "Just been showing Professor Spark the right way to Dr. Whomping Willow, but I don't want you running away with the idea that I'm better or her broccoli that she is. I just happen to have met several of these chosen plants on my travels. Greenhouse, 3 today, chaps," said Professor Spark, who was looking decidedly not at all her usual cheerful self. There was a number of interests. They had only ever worked in the greenhouse one before. Their houses far more interesting and dangerous plants. Professor Spark took a large key from her belt and unlocked the door. Harry caught a whiff of damp earth and fellowships, mingling with the heavy perfume of some giant. Umbrella flowers dangling from the ceiling. He was about to follow Ron and Hermione inside when Lockhart's hand shut out. "Harry, I've been wanting a word. You don't mind if it's a couple of minutes late, do you, Professor Spark?" Dunking by Professor Spark's skull, she didn't mind, but Lockhart said, "That is the ticket," and closed the greenhouse door in her face. "Harry," said Lockhart, his large white teeth gleaming in the sunlight as he shook his head. "Harry, Harry, Harry!" Completely nonplussed, Harry said nothing. "When I hear, well, of course, it was all my fault. Could have kicked myself." Harry had no idea he was talking about. He was about to say so when Lockhart went on. "Don't know then I had been more shocked flying a car to Hogwarts. Well, of course, I know at once why you did done it. Stood out of mind. Harry! Harry! Harry!" It was remarkable how he could every one of those brilliant teeth even when he wasn't talking. "Gave you a stitches for butchery, didn't I?" said Lockhart. "Gave you the bug. You got onto the front page of the paper with me and you couldn't wait to do it again." No, Professor, see." "Harry! Harry! Harry!" said Lockhart, reaching out and grasping his shoulder. "I understand. Natural to want a bit more once you had that first taste. And I blame myself for giving you that, because it was bound to see your head. But see here, young man, you can't start flying cars to try and get yourself noticed. Just calm down, all right? Plenty of the time we're all that when you are older. Yes, I know you. What are you thinking? It is all right for him. He is an internationally famous wizard already. But when I was 12, I was just as much of a nobody as you are now. In fact, I did say I was even more a nobody. I mean, a few people have heard of you, haven't they? All that business with you who must be that name." He glanced at the gliding cigar on the Harry's forehead. I know. It's not quite as good as winning which clearly smiled. Charming smiled at Word 5 times in a row as they hopped a start. Harry, it's a start. He gave Harry a hearty swing and strode off. He stood instantaneously for a few seconds. Then, remembering he was supposed to be in the greenhouse, he opened the door and sat inside. Professor Sprout was standing behind a central bench in the center of the greenhouse. About 20 pairs of different colored earmuffs were lying on the bench. When Harry had taken his place between Ron and Hermione, she said, "We'll be reporting mandrakes today. Now, who can tell me the properties of the mandrake?" To nobody's surprise, Hermione's hand was first into the air. "Mandrake of Mandragora, it is powerful but savage," said Hermione, citing a oathful as such she had swallowed the textbook. "It is used to return pupils who have been shafted of course, so the object said." "Excellent! 10 points to Gryffindor," said Professor Sprout. "The mandrake forms an essential part of Mort's intelligence. It is also, however, dangerous. Who can tell me why?" Hermione's hand narrowly missed Harry's glasses and he shot up again. "The cry of the mandrake is fatal to anyone who hears it," she said promptly. "Practical, take another 10 points," said Professor Sprout. "Now, the medicals we have here all still are very young." She pointed to a round deep trace as they spoke, and everyone shoved forward for a better look. 100 or so toffee-like plants, purplish green in color, were growing in rows. They looked quite remarkable to Harry, who didn't have the slightest idea what Hermione meant by the cry of the mandrake. "Everyone take a pair of earmuffs," said Professor Snape. There was a scramble as everyone tried to size a pair that wasn't pink and fluffy. "When I tell you to put them on, making sure your eyes are completely covered," said Professor Sprout. "When it's safe to remove them, I'll give you a thumbs up." "Right, earmuffs on." Harry snapped the mere earmuffs over his ears. They shut out sound completely. Professor Sprout put a thin, fluffy pair over her own ears, rolled up the sleeves of her robes, clasped one of the 40 plants firmly, and pulled it hard. Harry let out a gasp, surprised that no one could hear. Instead of Bruce, a small, moody, and strangely ugly baby popped out of the earth. The leaves were growing right out of his head. He had pale green, modest green, and was clearly balding at the top of his lungs. Professor Sprout took a large plant pot from under the table and plunged the mandrake into it. Behind him in the dark, Snape's composite until the only tufted ribs were visible. Professor Sprout dusted off her hands, giving them all the thumbs up and removed her own earmuffs. "As our mandrakes are only seedlings, their cries don't kill yet," she said calmly, as though she did have only nothing more exciting than water a begonia. "However, they could knock you out for several hours, and I'm sure none of you want to miss your first day back. Make sure your earmuffs are securely in place while not work. I will attract your attention when it is time to pack up." "Far too away. There is a large supply of pots here. Compost in the trucks over there, and be careful of the famous Spatula. It is teasing." She gave a sharp slap to a sticky dark red plant as she smoked, making a draw in the long folds that had been inching neatly over her shoulder. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were joined at the tree by a curly-haired purple-foot boy Harry knew by sight, but had never spoken to. "Justin Finch-Fletchley," he said brightly, shaking Harry by the hand. "Who know who you are, of course, the famous Harry Potter, and you are Hermione Granger, always sharp in everything." Hermione beamed as she had heard hand shaking. "Too, and Ron Weasley, wasn't that your flying car?" Ron didn't smile. The horror was obviously still on his mind. "Bellahurst something, isn't he?" said Justin happily, as they began flying their plants pops with dragon down compass. "Awfully brave sheep. Have you read his book? I did have died of fear that I did have been cornered when the telephone box up by a werewolf. But he stayed cool and sad, which is fantastic. But the name was down for a change. You know, I can't tell you how glad came here instead. Of course, Mother was sadly disappointed, but since I made her read Lockhart's books, I think she's begun to see how useful it will be to have a fully trained wizard in the family. After that, they didn't have much chance to talk. Their earmuffs were after back and they needed to unthread it to the mattress. Professor Sparks had made it look extremely easy, but it wasn't. The mantracus didn't look coming out of the bright earth, but didn't seem to want to go back into its hollow. They squirmed, kicked filled with their snapped little teeth, and the gadgets particularly fell one into a pot. By the end of the class, Harry, like everyone else, was busy etching and covered in the earth. They shipped it back to the castle for which quick march, and then the Gryffindors hurried off to Ferguson. Professors Miss McGonagall class were always hard, but today was especially difficult. Everything Harry had learned last year seemed to have leaked out of his head during the summer. He was supposed to be turning a battle into a button, but all he managed to do was give his beetle a lot of exercise as he scuttled over the desktop, avoiding his wand. Ron was having far worse problems. He had patched up his wands, and someone borrowed scuttle, but it seemed to be damaged beyond repair. It kept cracking and speaking at the odd damaged beyond repair. And every time Ron tried to return his battle, it infused him with thick grey smoke that smelled like rotten eggs. Unable to see what he was doing, Ron essentially squashed his beetle with his elbow, and he asked for a new one. Professor Mr. McGonagall was in peace. Harry was relieved to hear a lunch bell. His brain laughed like a warm sponge. Everyone flew out of the classroom, except him and Ron, who was working his wand furiously on their desk. Stupid, is that thing? Why home for another one? Harry suggested, as the one let off a bullet back like a firecracker. Oh yeah, and get another howler back, said Ron, shifting the now hissing one into his bag. It is your own fault your wand got mixed up. They went down to lunch, where Ron's mood was not improved by Hermione showing them a handful of perfect coat buttons she had produced in triffications. What have we got this afternoon? Said Harry, hastily changing the subject. Defense against the dark arts, said Hermione at once. Why? Demanded Ron, seizing her timetable. Have you outlined at Lockhart's lesson in Little Hearts? Hermione started the timetable back, flushing furiously. They finished lunch and went outside into the overcast courtyard. Hermione sat down on the stone step and buried her nose in buckets with vampires again. Harry and Ron stood talking about Quidditch for several minutes before Harry became aware that he was being closely watched. Looking up, he saw the very small, mousy-haired boy he had seen trying on the sorting hat last night. Starting at the Harry started confused. He was clutching that looked at him on Dictionary Muggle's camera, and the moment Harry looked at him, he went bright red. All right, Harry, I am Colin Creevy, he said breathlessly, taking a tentative step forward. I am in Gryffindor too. Do you think it'd be all right if can I have a picture? He said, raising the camera hopefully. A picture? Harry repeated blankly. So I can prove I have met you, said Colin Creevy eagerly, searching at her forwards. I know all about you. Everyone's told me about how stubborn when you know who tried to kill you, and you disappear and everything. And And how you have still got a lightning scar on your forehead. His eyes rattled. Harry's heartland, and the boy in my dormitory had, if developed the film in the right button, the picture still moved. Colin drew a great shuddering breath on his excitement and said, "It is brilliant here, isn't it? I never knew all thought I could do was magic till I got a letter from Hogwarts. My dad is a milkman. He couldn't believe it either, so I am taking lots of pictures to send home to him, and it would be really good if I had one of you." He looked imploringly at Harry. "Maybe your friend could take it, and I could stand next to you, and then could you say it? Signed photos? You are giving our sighted photos, Potter." Loud and scoffing, Draco Malfoy's voice echoed around the castle start. He had stopped right behind Colin, flanked as he always was at Hogwarts, by the large Tongues, Cornelius, Crabbe, and Goyle. Everyone quacked up. Malfoy rose into the crowd. "Harry Potter is giving out signed photos." "No, I'm not," said Harry angrily, his feet kitching. "Shut up, Malfoy. You are just jealous," picking up Colin, whose entered boy was about as thick as Crabbe snake. "Jealous?" said Malfoy, who didn't need to shout anymore. Have any consort was listening in. "Of what?" "I don't want a false guard right across my dad. Thanks. I don't think getting your head cut open makes you that special myself." Crabbe and Goyle were essentially separately. "It slaps, Malfoy," said Ron angrily. Crabbe stopped laughing and started dropping his card-like knuckles in a menacing way. "Be careful, Weasley," snatched Malfoy. "You don't want to stretch any trouble on me. I will have to come and take you away from school." He put on a shrill, pretty voice. "Did you put another two of mine?" A knot of Cinderella-filled ears nearly laughed loudly at this. Weasley would have signed photo, Potter, smacking Malfoy. It'd be worth no more than his family whole house. Ron prepared his stopwatch one, but Hermione shut Vargas with a snap and whispered, "Look out! What is all this? What is all this?" Gilderoy Lockhart was striding towards them, his chocolate robes circling behind him. "Who was giving out signed photos?" Harry started to speak, but he was cut short as Lockhart flung an arm around his shoulder and turned regretfully. "Shouldn't have asked. We meet again, Harry." Pinned to Lockhart's side and burning in with humility, Harry saw Malfoy slide mocking back into the crowd. "Come on then, Mr. Creevy," said Lockhart, becoming at Colin. "A double portrait can see further than that, and we will both sign it for you." Colin fumbled for his camera and took the picture as the bell rang behind him. Still wrote the chart of afternoon classes. "Off you go, move along there," Lockhart called to the crowd, and he set off back to the castle with Harry, who was wishing he knew a good Spanish spell, still clasped to his side. "A word to the witch, Harry," said Lockhart specially as they entered the building through a side door. "I covered up for you back there with young Trevi, if he was photographing me, too. Your shook fellows won't think you are exciting yourself up so much." Deaf to Harry's downwards, Lockhart swept him down a corridor like with starting students and up a staircase. "Let me just say that handing out signed pictures at this stage of your cousin's career isn't sensible. Looks a tad bited, Harry. To be frank, there may well come a time when he gave a likely charter. I don't think you were quite there yet." They had reached Lockhart's classroom as he let Harry go at last. Harry jumped his rope switch and hurried for a seat at the very above of the classes, where he busied himself with piling 7 of Lockhart's books in front of him, so that he could avoid looking for the real thing. The rest of the class came clattering in, and Ron and Hermione sat down on the other side of Harry. You could have tried get an etch on your face, but Ron, you'd better hope Crafty doesn't meet Ginny. They will be starting a Harry Potter fan club. Shut up, snapped Harry. The last thing he needed was for Lockhart to hear the phrase, Harry Potter fan club. When the whole class was seated, Lockhart cleared his throat loudly and silent hole. He reached forward, picked up his Neville Longbottom copy of Travels with Trolls and held it up to show it out, leaning portrait to the front. Me, he said, pointing at his winking a smile. Gittery Lockhart, author of Madeline, third classes, honorary member of the Dutch Force Defense Legion and 5 times winner, of which Weasley's most charming sight awards, but I don't talk about Weasley. That I didn't get rid of Bannon bashed by smiling at her. He waited for them to laugh. A few people smiled wickedly. I see you have all bought a complete set of my book. Well done. I thought we did have started today a little quiz. Nothing to worry about. Just check how well you have read them, how much you have taken in. One he had handed out to Cedric, and he returned to the front of the class and he said, "You have 30 minutes. Start." Now, Harry looked down at his paper and read, "What is Gittery Lockhart's favorite color? What is Gittery Lockhart's secret ambitions? What, in your opinion, is Gittery Lockhart's greatest attachment to date?" On and it went over their sides of paper, right down to when is Gittery Lockhart's birthday and what would his ideal gift be. Half an hour later, Lockhart collected in the papers and repeated thoughts they were in front of her glasses. Chut! Hardly anyone will remember that my favorite color is lilac. I say so here with the Yeti, and a few of you need to read renderings with variable wardrobes more carefully. I clearly sketched in chapter 12 that my ideal birthday would have a harmony between all magic and non-magic pupils, such I wouldn't say no to a large bottle of orange or whiskey. He gave them another raucous wink. Ron was now starting at Lockhart's wedding with an expression of disappeared off his face. Seamus Finnegan and Jean Thomas, who were sitting in front, were shaking his lion laughter. Hermione, on the other hand, was listening to Lockhart with loved attention and gave a start when he mentioned her name. But Mr. Hermione Granger knew my secret ambitions is to read the word of Elville and market my outranching of hair care potions. Good girl, in fact, he flipped her paper over. Full marks. Why did Mr. Hermione Granger? Hermione raised a tremble hand. Excellent, beamed Lockhart. Click excellent. Take 10 points for Gryffindor, and so to business. He bent down behind his desk and delivered a large covered cut into it. Now, be warned, it was my job to arm you against the foulest creatures now known to be wizard kind. You may find yourself facing your worst fears in this room. Know only that no harm can befall you with I am here. All I'll ask is what you remain calm. In spite of himself, Harry leaned around his pile of books for a better look at the cage. Lockhart placed a hand on the cover. Jean and Thomas had stopped laughing. Now, Neville was covering his front of seat. "I must ask you not to scream," said Lockhart in a loud voice. "It might provoke them." As the class held its breath, Lockhart ripped off the cover. "Yes," he said dramatically. "Freshly cut Cornish beetroots." Seamus Finnegan couldn't control himself. He let out a snort of laughter which even Lockhart couldn't mistake of a stream of cherry. "Yes," he smiled at Seamus. "Well, they're not very dangerous, are they?" Seamus chuckled. "Don't be so sure," said Lockhart, waggling a finger indulgently at Seamus. "Devilish tricky little beguns they can be." "Right then," Lockhart said loudly, "let us see what you make of them," and he opened the catch. "Come on now, round them up! They're only pieces." Lockhart shut. He rolled up his zips, bandaged his one below the Pacific patronymy. It had absolutely no effect. One of the pigs seized Lockhart and threw it out of the window, too. The bell rang and there was much rush towards the exit. in the real cheap kind that followed. Harry Lockhart shrieked up, caught sight of Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who were almost at the door, and said, "Well, I will ask you there three to just nip the rest of them back into their cage." Swished past them and shut the door quickly behind him. "Can you believe him?" roared Ron, as one of the remaining pixies hit him painfully on the ear. "He just wants to give us some hands-on experience," said Hermione, emblazing two pixies at once with a clever freezing charm and stuffing them back into their cage. "Hand-ons," said Harry, who was trying to grab a pixie's dancing out at Richard with his tongue out. Hermione, I didn't have a clue what he was doing. "Rubbish," said Hermione. "You have read his book. Look at those amazing things he's done." "He says he has done," Ron muttered.